Ah, quotation marks. They're like flying pairs of paired commas. 4 for the price of 1, I guess. Quotation marks aren't that complicated. You just put them before and after any quotation. And what's a quotation, someone might ask? It's when you report someone else's exact words. For example, you might quote a research article in an academic paper, or a character in a short story. So, whenever you're dealing with a quotation or dialogue of some variety, your punctuational duty is to put quotation marks before and after it. Easy. But you can probably tell that there's a little more to say since this video isn't over. First things first, or I guess second things second, let's talk about the spooky side of the quotation mark. Scare quotes. Oh, but don't be frightened. Scare quotes aren't harmful, but they're not very useful either. See, writers will occasionally put a word in quotes as a kind of sign that that word isn't meant to be taken seriously, or that the writer really means to say something other than what that word means. So you might see something like, Joe is such a cool guy. What does this sentence mean? Well, it really only means that Joe is something other than a cool guy. See, the trouble with scare quotes is that because they're adopting a convention that says these words came from somewhere else, the writer is trying to use a word without owning it. They're also using scare quotes to say something other than what they really mean. And this is a problem because there are so many words out there. When you use scare quotes, you don't tell a reader what you mean, you only eliminate one option out of thousands. So a reader will know what you don't mean, but they won't really know what you do mean. Also, and this may be unfair, but I think you have to be feeling pretty pleased with yourself to be using scare quotes. At least, that's when I find myself using them, and that's just not terribly charming. So my vote would be to avoid scare quotes as often as possible. Why not just say what you mean so that everyone will understand? Doesn't that seem more productive? So if you're writing anything more formal than a text message, just use those useful scare quotes to the side. But wait, there's more. Quotation marks are fun because they have interesting interactions with other punctuation marks. Oh, and as always, you can trust that what follows is based on editing conventions in the US. The basic idea, though, is that quotations can be followed by many different kinds of punctuation. But the fun thing is that some punctuation marks go inside the quotation marks and others don't. Periods and commas always go inside, because they're tiny little kids that will get cold if you leave them outside. That's right, if you have a period or a comma outside the quotation marks, you will look like a cruel, heartless monster, and your sentence will look kinda crazy. The only exception, and I hasten to add that this is not really an exception at all, is in the case of a parenthetical citation. In that case, the citation is not part of the quote, but it is part of the sentence or phrase and should therefore precede the end punctuation. Periods and commas go after the quotation marks only when a parenthetical citation is involved. Colons and their partial cousins semicolons always go outside. That's because they're big and ungainly, and they would probably mess up the furniture if you let them stay inside. Question marks and exclamation points, though, are the amphibians of the quotation mark interaction chart. They can go either inside or outside, depending on whether they are part of the quotation in question or not. If the quotation is a question or exclamation, they should go inside. If the quotation is just included in your own question or exclamation, then of course it should go outside, because the punctuation belongs to you, not to the quote. If you're looking at punctuation before a quotation, a comma is the most common glue for that scenario, but a colon can also be used if it's the kind of place where a colon makes sense. And importantly, if the quotation is just fitted into the normal structure of the sentence, especially with a word like that, no punctuation at all is needed beforehand. Also, if you have a quotation within a quotation, use single quotes instead of double for the interior quotation. Also, if you're trying to pull off a quote within a quote within a quote, well, you might just want to take up ceramics instead. Things can only go so deep. Of course, you also have the option of modifying quotations. You can use ellipses to omit parts of a quotation, taking care not to misrepresent the original meaning, of course. And you can also put square brackets around anything that deviates from the original material, whether that's substituting a noun phrase in for an ambiguous pronoun, changing a verb tense, or adding an explanatory note. Brackets are useful for modifying a quotation to fit your own syntax while also being transparent about your own tomfoolery. And that should just about do it for today. We've got even more exciting stuff coming up, and you can quote me on that.